At first, Peter Parker feels like a simple hero story. A kid gets powers, swings across New York, saves lives, and tries to stay normal. Everything feels under control. Until you notice something darker. Everyone close to him slowly starts falling apart, and today we will see how it all breaks. Curt Connors, the mind that loses its own body. Curt Connors is what happens when control doesn't break in one moment, but starts slipping while he is still aware of it. A scientist trying to fix what he lost, but every solution quietly turns into something he cannot undo. At first, nothing feels wrong, just small changes. A movement happening before he decides. His hand lifting slightly on its own, stopping mid-air as if waiting for permission. A reaction that doesn't match his intent. He pauses, confused, staring at his fingers as they twitch without instruction. And the terrifying part is he can still recognize the mistake happening in real time. But he cannot stop it from continuing. Then it escalates. The silence in his head doesn't stay silent anymore. He looks at a monitor and reacts a second after the input already changes. His reflection in the glass wall moves slightly out of sync with him. Not distorted, just wrong enough to notice. And when it finally breaks through, it doesn't feel like becoming a monster. It feels like being trapped inside something that uses his body better than he does. Because Curt is still there, just no longer in control of anything that carries his name. Flint Marko, the man who can't hold himself together. Flint Marko doesn't just suffer loss. He becomes instability itself. A man trying to survive for his daughter in a world that keeps pushing him into corners he cannot escape. At first, it feels like survival. Then it turns into something else. A step forward leaves part of him behind. Sand breaks off without warning, reforming and falling again. He tries to stand still, but even stillness doesn't hold. His shape shifts like it can't decide what he is supposed to be. Sometimes he pulls himself together for a moment, just long enough to see it fall apart again. And the worst part is not the power. It's what stays aware inside it. Every collapse is felt. Every split happens in real time. Like he is still inside something that refuses to stay whole. Because Flint is not becoming something stronger. He is slowly turning into something that can't stay whole long enough to be saved. Harry Osborn. Friendship that disappears in silence. Harry Osborn is what happens when two best friends slowly stop recognizing each other. At first, Peter and Harry feel inseparable. They shared jokes, conversations that used to flow naturally without effort. Everything between them feels easy, stable, and familiar. But Spider-Man's world does not leave relationships untouched for long. Peter keeps disappearing without explanation, returning injured, distracted, emotionally somewhere else. At first, Harry ignores it because trust fills the silence for people you love. But slowly, the gaps start becoming impossible not to notice. Then his father dies. And suddenly, every missing answer starts feeling different. And slowly, grief turns into suspicion. Harry's eyes filled with anger, and he slapped Peter in party. But the cruelest part comes too late. In his final moments, Harry finally learns Peter was never responsible for his father's death at all. The anger, the distance, the years of resentment were built on something false. And suddenly, the friendship he spent so long destroying becomes the one thing he wants back. Eddie Brock. Pain that finds a voice. Eddie Brock is what happens when pain finally finds something that listens to it. He sits alone in the dark watching. Everything he lost repeat without stopping. The screen flashes fragments of his ruined life, replaying the same moments over and over. He starts shaking slightly, jaw tightening, and eyes refusing to blink. Then his voice breaks into the silence. Not words at first, just frustration turning into sound. But that silence doesn't fade. It builds pressure inside him instead. Until something answers it, not with comfort, but with something that reacts to everything he refuses to say out loud. Venom attaches itself like a second voice inside his thoughts. His breathing becomes heavier, more aggressive. His body tenses like it is no longer fully his. The room feels smaller, louder, and alive in the wrong way. Every memory now hits harder, and every regret feels physical. Because Eddie is no longer just feeling pain. He is becoming something that carries it. And that pressure does not stay in him alone for long. Otto Octavius. Control that starts moving without him. Otto Octavius is where that pressure finally stops feeling human. The lab hums with mechanical noise, metal arms hanging behind him like predators waiting to wake up. He still believes he is the one in control. Then one of the claws twitches before he moves. Not after, but before. He freezes, but the room doesn't wait for him to understand why. Equipment slamming across the room, glass shattered, the monitors spike. System overload floods the screens in red. Alarms erupt through the facility while sparks burst from the machinery around him. People run. Somewhere in the chaos, the arms keep moving on their own. And for a moment, he can't tell if the system is failing or finally starting to function without needing him at all. He tries to think clearly, but every thought feels delayed, like it's arriving after the machine has already decided the outcome. And in the middle of the chaos, Rosie, his wife, dies before Otto can stop the machine he no longer fully controls. He tries to regain control, but every reaction comes a second too late, like the machine is already thinking ahead of him. The claws begin correcting his movements, dragging his body with them instead of obeying him. And that is the moment everything changes. Because Otto is no longer using the machine is slowly teaching Otto how to become part of it. Norman Osborn. When restraint finally breaks. Norman Osborn is what happens when that spread reaches its final limit. Boardroom applause echoes under glass buildings, a perfect public image holding everything in place. He sits still while the world praises him. But stillness is not peace, it is pressure. And pressure always reaches a limit. Behind closed doors, something finally stops waiting. Not transformation, but release. Green Goblin is not another identity. It is what happens when everything held back refuses to stay hidden anymore. Every rule becomes an irritation. Every boundary becomes something to destroy. Spider-Man stops being a rival and becomes a contradiction. Because restraint feels like weakness, and weakness cannot stay. So every encounter stops being about winning and becomes about releasing what has been trapped too long. Ending. The world that never stops changing him. Peter Parker swings through New York at night. The city still glows, still moves, still feels alive. But every rescue now feels heavier, like something always shifts somewhere else after he leaves. A life is saved, but something else quietly breaks. A bond weakens. A trust changes. Nothing stays the same for long, even if no one notices it right away. Peter starts seeing it as a pattern, not isolated moments. Every time he helps someone, the world adjusts in ways he cannot undo. He keeps going anyway because stopping would mean watching everything fall apart at once. But that thought stays with him. If saving people always leaves something behind, then what is Spider-Man really protecting? And the city keeps moving like it never needed an answer.